This is London, England. I'm standing on the corner opposite Parliament Square, watching the traffic and the throngs of tourists go by. There's a very marked contrast here. London is one of the busiest cities in the world. The 21st century rushes by in the shadow of one of the oldest functioning workplaces in the world, the Palace of Westminster, the heart of the UK government. There's a similar contrast in many businesses. There's a marked difference between what's possible and what's put into practice. Lots of companies, for example, have invested literally tens of millions of dollars in ERP systems. But when it comes to sending an invoice, they use the tens of millions of investment to print a piece of paper and put it in the mail. Electronic invoicing can literally revolutionise business, saving millions of dollars in the supply chain. In the public sector, those savings can be passed on to the taxpayer. So can government influence the increased use of electronic invoicing? I went to speak to UK Member of Parliament, Stephen McPartland, who has very strong views on this. Interestingly, and in keeping with the theme of contrast, we chose the darkened recesses of the centuries-old Westminster Palace to talk about 21st century business.
Well, I think electronic invoicing is beneficial to the taxpayer simply because we've estimated it would save immediately about £6 billion, maybe up to £8 billion. And there's two main reasons for this. One is by introducing the online version of electronic invoicing and electronic payments, it would allow the government itself to streamline its processes, and that would be £6 billion worth of cuts that we wouldn't have to make. Additionally, in my experience, small businesses often struggle because of cash flow. So as a result of that, if we were able to make the payments faster and make the invoicing faster and far more streamlined, well then those small businesses wouldn't be going out of business as much and we'd be helping them.
Stephen's quite an unusual character in that he's a politician that really gets e-business. And his thinking is absolutely in line with the other thought leaders in the industry. I also spoke to Christian Lanng from Tradeshift and Luke McKeever from OB10.
E-invoicing is one of the areas where there's really, first of all, significant cost savings possible for public sector. So I think public sectors all over Europe right now are looking on how can they, not necessarily just cut cost, but how can they move, value. So it's, the money I spend on services that actually add value for the users, which is the citizens. And I think e-invoicing is one of those areas where you can cut a lot of cost in the back office and you can move it to real services for real citizens. So I think that's one of the reasons it's such a great driver.
And if the government can set the bar extremely high and let other people copy them rather than them being the laggards, I mean today we see core large-scale international businesses setting the standard and the government's really quite a long way behind. It would be great to see the government lead from the front and say, do what I do rather than do what I say in sort of the mandatory markets.
It's not just about cost saving. You see, if you move to the southern countries, it's also about making sure you reclaim more of the VAT or of the taxes that might, leak out of the system, and that's also where it becomes a platform for compliance.
If you look at some of the countries around the world, Sweden have been doing this since 2008, Denmark 2005, Finland's just started January 2010, but other countries like Mexico and Brazil, which others would consider to be emerging markets, they're actually way ahead of us and they're mandating electronic invoicing and payments.
I think the European Commission's taking it incredibly seriously, and it's a bit of a shame to watch what will happen in the European Commission probably this year, some point in 2013, where they'll set a directive and the UK has to comply with the directive rather than being ahead of it. So for the European Commission to drive something in the UK to catch up just feels a little bit disappointing.
I'd like to think that by the end of 2013 the UK government would understand the benefits of e-invoicing, especially in the public sector, and take some action to help stimulate its use. We'll have to wait and see.